She was just 8 years old when she was found, alone, shivering in the Vermont woods, clutching a torn teddy bear, and unable to speak a single word. No one knew who she was. No one came looking for her. For years they called her a miracle. But 26 years later, she found a photograph that changed everything. Because in that photo, faded, almost forgotten, she saw herself, standing next to a family that had vanished without a trace in 1999. No one ever solved the case. No bodies were ever found. No goodbyes. Until now. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, do you believe that every child remembers even when they forget? Now, take a deep breath and come with me to Brattleboro, Vermont, where a buried photo led to a truth the town spent decades trying to erase. It was the kind of summer morning where the air smelled like wet pine and the sun filtered through the trees like golden dust. The mist still clung to the grass in the backyards of Brattleboro, Vermont, and the faint sound of a lawnmower hummed somewhere in the distance. But on one particular cul-de-sac, Briar Lane, the world had fallen unnaturally quiet. No barking dogs, no screen doors creaking open, no laughter of children biking to the corner store for candy, just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, heavy, like something is about to snap. In the modest blue house at the end of Briar Lane, the mailbox overflowed with flyers and unopened bills. A red tricycle lay on its side by the porch, one wheel slowly turning in the breeze. The curtains in the front window were half drawn, but behind them no movement, no light. The neighbors said it happened overnight, or maybe in the early morning. Nobody was sure. All they knew was, by the time the sun rose on July 12, 1999, the Williamson family was gone. All 4 of them. Ethan and Clare, the parents, and their 2 children, Jonah, 9, and little Maisie, just 5. They weren't a family that kept to themselves, quite the opposite. Clare taught piano lessons out of the living room. Ethan ran a hardware shop in town and hosted barbecues every other Sunday. Jonah played Little League. Maisie loved dress-up and sidewalk chalk. So when a neighbor walked over to borrow a rake and found the front door unlocked, the breakfast table set but untouched, and the dog, Baxter, whining inside the laundry room, something felt wrong. Very wrong. The police came. Then state investigators. The story made local headlines. Family vanishes without a trace. Brattleboro shaken. No signs of struggle. No signs of packing. Claire's purse was still on the counter. Jonah's baseball glove lay on the porch swing. A single bowl of cereal had gone soggy on the kitchen table. Even the baby monitor was still blinking green on the side table upstairs. The house felt paused, like life had stopped in the middle of a sentence. For weeks they searched the woods. They questioned everyone, friends, co-workers, distant cousins. Helicopters hovered. Dogs tracked scents that went nowhere. Rumors spread like wildfire. An abduction, a debt, a cult, a lover's pact. Eventually people moved on. The Williamson house was sealed, listed, then quietly pulled off the market. The town tried to forget, but some never did. 26 years later, on a cold October morning, the front gate creaked open again. Emily Harrow had never set foot in Brattleboro before that day. But something had drawn her there, something quiet, persistent, unshakable. She was 34, an architect, rational, grounded. But the photograph she found in a crumbling box beneath her adoptive father's attic had changed everything. It was faded, almost sepia-toned. Taken in 1999, the date was scribbled on the back in smudged ink. It showed a family standing on a porch, smiling. A man, a woman, a young boy, and a little girl in a yellow dress. But what caught Emily's breath was the woman. She looked just like her, not similar, not familiar, identical. And next to her, the girl in the yellow dress was holding a ragged teddy bear. The same teddy bear Emily had clutched in every photo from her first year in foster care. But there was more. In the corner of the photo, half cut off, stood a girl, barely 8 years old, with a crooked braid, a scraped knee, and wide, confused eyes. Emily had never seen that photo before, but somehow, deep in her bones, she knew that girl was her. And this forgotten house on Briar Lane, had answers. The kind no one wanted her to find. She didn't tell anyone she was coming, didn't check in with the realtor. She just parked, stepped out, and let the October wind bite at her skin as she walked up the overgrown path. The front door was locked. But around the back, a pane of glass in the basement window was cracked. She crawled in. It smelled like mold and thyme. The air was cold, heavy. Dust floated in thick layers. The wallpaper peeled. In the kitchen, the same bowl of cereal still sat on the table, now hardened like cement. She ran her fingers across the edge of the counter and felt a pull in her chest. She didn't know why she remembered that tile, that chip in the corner. The silence in the house wasn't just quiet. It was loaded. She moved slowly, room by room. Then upstairs, in what looked like a girl's bedroom, something caught her eye, a dusty mirror. And drawn on it, faintly like it had been traced with a finger years ago, were the letters E.H. She stepped back. Her breath caught. The same initials she had always signed in her childhood diaries. How could they be here? Downstairs again, she tried the door to the basement. It groaned. The stairs creaked with every step. She descended into the dark. Cobwebs clung to her face. The air smelled of rust and old wood. In the far corner, behind a stack of broken furniture, she saw something odd. Wait. Inside it, wrapped in an old flannel blanket, was a stack of photo albums. She opened the first one, page after page of the Williamson family, smiling, celebrating birthdays, camping trips, school projects, and then a page torn out, a space left empty. Behind it, taped to the back cover, was a folded note, shaky handwriting, blue ink. She opened it. It read, "If someone finds this, her name is Emily. Please protect her. We didn't have a choice." Her hands trembled. Outside, a car door slammed. She froze. Then from the kitchen upstairs, the unmistakable sound of the front door unlocking. Emily Harrow always told people she didn't believe in fate. She built her life on structure, clean lines, logic. As a restoration architect in Portland, she spent her days resurrecting old homes, brick by brick, peeling back layers of paint to understand what once was. But when it came to her own life, her own past, she kept everything sealed. No peeling, no restoring, just walls. She was adopted at age 8. The story she'd been told, and later learned to repeat like a memorized poem, was that she had been found in a wooded area near Bennington, disoriented, cold, holding a torn teddy bear. No ID, no memory, no trace. The social workers called her Jane Doe 47. For 6 months, she didn't speak. When she finally did, she only gave one name, Emily. So Emily she became. She was placed with the Harrows, Lydia and Liam, a couple in their 40s who couldn't have children. Lydia had wanted a quiet girl, someone who wouldn't scream or bite like their last foster placement. Emily, still too stunned by whatever had come before, barely made a sound. And so she was perfect. The Harrows lived in a cedar-sided house at the edge of town, surrounded by fog and fir trees. Lydia worked nights at the hospital. Liam taught biology at the local high school. They were kind in their way, distant but never cruel. They gave her a room with lavender walls, books, clean clothes, even a new teddy bear, though it never replaced the one. Love was more complicated. Emily grew up walking grateful, like something was missing, like there was a shadow behind her she could. She graduated early, skipped prom, skipped parties, went straight into architecture school. While her peers drank and dated, Emily haunted libraries, studied blueprints, and watched old home videos of other families on YouTube just to see how it was supposed to look. She didn't remember her childhood, not really. Only flashes, a yellow dress, a man's voice shouting, a hand gripping hers too tight, and once a song, soft, lullaby-like, in a woman's voice that made her chest ache. But she never told anyone, not even Lydia or Liam, especially not Liam. When Lydia died suddenly from a stroke 5 years ago, Emily didn't cry. She handled the funeral arrangements like a project. She wrote the eulogy on hotel stationery, spoke calmly, then drove home in silence. She and Liam drifted after that, and then, last month, Liam called. He said he was moving into assisted living and needed help cleaning out the attic. Emily hadn't been back in years. The house smelled the same, cedarwood and floor polish. Liam's movements were slower now, his words clipped, his eyes tired. She boxed up books, photo frames, letters, and then she found the crate. It was buried beneath layers of old blankets. Inside, school papers, receipts, and a sealed envelope. No stamp, no return address. Just one word written on the front, Emily. Her hands went cold. Inside, the photograph, a second teddy bear, worn, threadbare, and all too familiar. And a hospital tag, yellowed and cracked. The name on the tag read, Maisie Williamson. She stared at it for a long time. She didn't know what Maisie meant. She didn't know what Williamson meant. But something inside her, something deeper than memory, whispered, "This is who you were." She showed the items to Liam. His hands trembled when he saw the photo. "I didn't think you'd ever find that," he said quietly. "Who are they?" Emily asked. But Liam just looked away. "I promised I wouldn't say anything." "To who?" Silence. "Liam," she pressed, "who gave you this?" He turned toward the window. "The woman who brought you to me the night before she disappeared." Emily felt like the floor had dropped out beneath her. Liam never mentioned any woman, never said anything about a direct handoff. He told her she was found, alone, in the woods. "You said they found me near Bennington." "They did, but that was staged. The woman wanted to protect you. She begged me not to tell. She said your life depended on it." Emily's chest tightened. "What was her name?" He shook his head slowly. "She never said. But she looked like you." That night Emily couldn't sleep. She held the photo in her hands for hours, tracing the faces with her thumb. Then she Googled the name, Williamson family, missing Brattleboro, 1999. There it was. Story, the headlines, the photos, and in one of them, the same woman from the attic photo. Her name was Clare Williamson, music teacher, mother, missing, along with her husband and 2 children presumed dead. Except one of those children, Maisie, had apparently survived, and that child was Emily. She looked again at the girl in the photo, the yellow dress, the scraped knee, the same eyes staring back at her in the mirror for 34 years. How had no one connected this? No fingerprints, no DNA? She checked her own birth certificate. It had been reissued in 2000 after her adoption. Her original records had been seized. Standard practice. But now she couldn't unsee it. She booked a one-way ticket to Vermont. No luggage, just a coat, the photo, and she didn't tell Liam, didn't tell anyone. She had to know the truth. And somehow, she knew the truth lived on Briar. So when the door creaked open that October morning, and the wind carried the scent of moss and she stepped inside with. The house felt too familiar. Like walking into a dream she had once gotten. Every floorboard, every chipped paint detail, even the whisper of dust in the air. She stood in the middle of the living room, heart pounding, and then the front door, which she had locked behind her, began to unlock from the outside. She turned her head, frozen. A shadow moved across the frosted glass, and a key slid into the lock. The key turned slowly in the lock. Emily backed up one step, then another, until her heel brushed against the leg of the dusty coffee table. Her heart drummed in her ears. The only light in the room filtered through the cracked blinds, casting long vertical shadows across the floor like prison bars. The door creaked open and in. A man stepped inside. Gray coat, leather satchel shoulder. His eyes scanned the room like he already knew who would be standing there. Emily didn't move. "Emily Harrow?" he asked. She didn't answer. He reached into his coat and she flinched, but instead of a weapon, he pulled out a badge. Worn, weathered, the corners peeling. "Detective Samuel Callahan," he said, voice low. "Retired. I used to work the Williamson case. You look exactly like her." Emily felt her stomach twist. "Like who?" "Clare, your mother." She hadn't expected to hear that word out loud. Not like that. Not from him. He stepped inside, shut the door behind him, and looked around the living room. "You shouldn't be in here. The property was sealed after the investigation. But I suppose I lost my moral authority the day I stopped believing this family ever left willingly." Emily tried to steady her voice. "I found a photo in my father's attic. It had my name, and this house, and them." Sam studied her for a long moment. Then, quietly, he said, "I know." He sat down slowly on the old sofa, coughing into his sleeve. "I've waited years for someone to come back here. Figured it'd be you." Emily's breath caught. "You knew?" "I suspected. Couldn't prove a damn thing. After they vanished, everything turned into a circus. The feds came, then left. The town got scared. Too many whispers, not enough facts. People said they saw Ethan buying rope at the hardware store. Others swore Clare was having an affair. Some even blamed the kids, said Jonah had started at. He was 9, Sam shrugged. Small towns eat their own. She walked toward the stairs. "I need to see the rest." He didn't stop her. The upstairs hallway was dark, even during the day. The wallpaper was covered in tiny blue flowers, now peeling at the corners. Each room Emily entered felt like stepping into a different chapter of a life she should have lived. Maisie's room, her room, was painted yellow. A toy chest sat at the foot of the bed. Inside it, dress-up clothes, a broken wand, plastic jewelry. She reached for the necklace, a red heart on a silver string, and her fingers trembled. She had seen it before, in a dream or a memory. She wasn't sure anymore. In Jonah's room, baseball posters curled on the walls. A glove rested on the windowsill, stiff with age. Under the bed she found a shoe box taped shut. Inside, Polaroids, dozens of them. Jonah with friends at school. Maisie with chocolate on her face. Ethan and Clare in front of a Christmas tree. And then, one photo that didn't fit. It was taken in the woods. The family stood beside a tall, moss-covered stone. Clare looked tired. Jonah's shirt was torn. Maisie, Emily, had dirt on her cheeks. On the back someone had written, "Day 5, still no sign. Keep moving." She felt the chill spread through her chest. "What does this mean?" she asked Sam when she returned downstairs. He took the photo, examined it, sighed. There were rumors, he said, that the Williamsons weren't taken, that they were running. From who? Sam didn't answer right away. Instead, he pointed to the piano in the corner. "Look there." Emily walked over. The lid was closed. She lifted it. Dust rose. The keys were yellowed. One of them, middle C, was missing. And inside the slot where it had once been, taped in place, was a folded piece of paper. Emily unfolded it slowly. Hand-drawn, crude, labeled in Clare's handwriting. On the bottom corner, a message. "If we don't make it back, she's with Liam." Emily froze. Her fingers tightened. She looked up at Sam, eyes wide. They knew I would survive. Sam nodded once. "That's why I came. That note was never recovered during the initial search. No one ever looked inside the piano." He stood. "There's something else you need to see." They left the house through the back door, followed the edge of the fence, and crossed into the woods behind the property. The trees were tall and close together, the air thick with the smell of wet leaves. Sam moved like he'd walked the path 1,000 times. Eventually, they reached a clearing. In the center stood the same stone from the photograph. Carved into it, faded by time, were the initials, E plus C.J. Paul. She reached out, touched the letters. Something buried. She crouched down and pulled at the earth. A rusted metal box. Inside, a baby bracelet, a key, and a small cassette tape. She held it up. "What is this?" Sam's eyes were wet. Proof. They returned to town. At Sam's house, he dusted off an old cassette player and pressed play. A woman's voice crackled through. "If someone finds this, my name is Clare Williamson. We're not missing. We're hiding. There's something in this town. Something bigger than us. And if you're hearing this, I'm begging you, protect my daughter. Her name is Maisie. We changed it for her safety. Her father, he did things. Dangerous things." The tape ended in static. Emily couldn't breathe. "What did he do?" she asked. Sam turned toward her, jaw clenched. He worked for someone, a private client, something involving land deeds and fake ownership. Brattleboro had some powerful men, developers, officials. Ethan found something he shouldn't have. Tried to go to the police. Then they vanished. Emily sat down. "My father was murdered?" "No body, no confirmation, but I think they were trying to rape, and only one child made it." Emily looked at the bracelet in her hand. The letters spelled out Maisie, her name, her real name. The next day, Emily visited the town archives. She found redacted records, a missing 911 call, a blacked-out property file tied to the Williamson. The librarian, Grace Langford, was hesitant at first, but then pulled her aside. "Claire was my best friend," Grace whispered. "I helped her forge the documents. We thought we could run. We were wrong." Emily leaned in. "Do you know where she went?" Grace shook her head. "But I do know someone else arrived, someone who's never spoken." Emily frowned. "Who?" Grace hesitated, whispered, "Jonah?" The silence that followed Grace's words seemed to stretch across the tiny room like a crack in the wall. Emily stared at her, pulse loud in her ears. "Jonah survived?" she asked. Grace nodded, her voice a whisper. "He was seen in New Hampshire a few months after the disappearance, alone. No ID, just gone again." Emily's voice faltered. "Why didn't you tell the police?" Grace looked down. "We were told not to." Emily's blood ran cold. "By who?" Grace hesitated. Her fingers trembled as she reached under the counter, pulling out a small cloth-bound journal. "Claire left this with me the day before they vanished. Told me never to read it unless something happened. I waited for years. Then I read it. But by then, it was too late." The journal was aged and fraying. On the first page, written in elegant cursive, were the words, "For Maisie, in case I'm not there to tell you the truth myself." Emily flipped through pages filled with handwriting, drawings, to-do lists, and half-finished letters. There were detailed entries about Ethan's accidental firing from the land registry, notes on property transactions in Brattleboro, and people Claire didn't trust. City officials, real estate lawyers, even police officers. But one name kept appearing, T. Hallbrook. Emily circled it with her finger. "Who's that?" she asked. Grace went pale. "Thomas Hallbrook was on the city council back then. Owned a development firm. He had ties to everyone, including the police chief." Emily took the journal with her, thanking Grace, and walked into the crisp October air. She needed more. Back at Sam's house, they laid out every piece of evidence they had. The map from the piano, the Polaroids, the bracelet, the cassette, Claire's journal. Each item pointed to something deliberate, a planned escape, a threat, and one surviving child. Emily's heart beat faster. She remembered the photo in her father's attic, the girl half cut off on the edge. What if that wasn't just a photo? What if Jonah had been there, or right behind her? They decided to follow the map. It was rough, hand-drawn, but it showed a route from Brattleboro into the southern forests of New Hampshire. A series of X's marked spots, one labeled safe, another bridge, another hide. It took hours to match the crude drawing to actual coordinates. The next morning, Emily and Sam drove out. The first X was an old ranger station, boarded up and half collapsed. Inside, Emily found a rusted coffee can hidden behind a loose brick. Inside it, a strip of photo negatives. They brought it to a local photo lab. The prints came back 3 hours later. 5 photographs, blurry, but clear enough. One showed Clare holding Maisie, Emily, wrapped in a thick jacket. Another showed Jonah with a bruised cheek holding a flashlight. The third was of Ethan, scribbling on a notepad. The last 2 were of a cabin, deep in the woods, and a man standing at the edge of the trees, partially obscured. The timestamp October 16th, 1999, 10 days after the family was declared missing. Emily clutched the photos. They were alive, but something stopped them. They tried to track down the cabin. The man in the photo became the new target. They showed the photo to locals. One recognized the cabin, said it had burned down in 2002, but the land still belonged to someone. The name on the deed, Thomas Halbrook. Emily's skin prickled. "He found them," she whispered, "or they found him." They drove to the lot. Nothing remained but the stone foundation, blackened and covered with moss. But beneath a pile of broken wood, they found something buried. An old leather-bound planner, burned at the corners but partially intact. Inside were receipts, meeting notes, and one letter addressed to Ethan Williamson. The letter was from Thomas Halbrook, dated October 4th, 1999. It read, "You have 3 days to hand over the documents. I don't care where you run. You and your family can't hide forever." Sam clenched his jaw. I knew he was involved. But this... They brought the documents to the State Police Archives in Montpelier. The investigator on duty, a woman named Alicia Rodriguez, was wary at first. But when she saw the planner, "This name," she said, pointing to Halbrook's signature. "He was under federal investigation. Corruption, bribery, land theft. It all got buried after he died in 2003. Officially, heart attack. Unofficially, some think he was silenced." Emily showed her the journal. Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. This could reopen the entire case. For the first time, Emily felt like the ground beneath her wasn't crumbling. Until that night. Back in her motel, she found the room door slightly ajar. Nothing was stolen, nothing obvious. But under her pillow, the photo of Clare and Maisie had been torn in half. She called Sam. He didn't answer. She drove to his house, lights off. No response. She broke a window and entered. The house had been ransacked, papers scattered, drawers pulled out. But Sam was gone. Only one thing remained, pinned to the fridge with a magnet, a note written in shaky handwriting. It said, "He's still watching. Don't trust anyone." Emily collapsed into the nearest chair. Her breath came in short bursts. She called 911, but by the time they arrived, the house looked untouched. The note, gone. No signs of forced entry. No sign Sam had ever been there. She tried to explain. They didn't believe her. She drove back to her motel, locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall for hours. At 3:17 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. "Maisie?" "It's Jonah." Emily stared at the message glowing on her phone. "Maisie, it's Jonah." She read it 10 times, her hands trembling. No punctuation, no explanation, no number attached to it. She replied immediately. "Jonah, where are you? Is it really you?" No response. She called the number. It rang twice, then disconnected. She tried again, straight to voicemail. All night she sat on the floor, staring at her phone like it held a pulse. She didn't sleep. couldn't. By morning, her motel door had another message slipped under it. No envelope, just a folded page in small, cramped handwriting. You weren't supposed to find the photo. Meet me where it all began. Noon, come alone. No signature, no address, just coordinates. Emily copied the numbers into her GPS. It led her deep into the Vermont wilderness, a forgotten trail just past the state border, off a cracked asphalt road where cell service vanished. The woods were thick, silent, suffocating. She parked, walked. At exactly noon, she reached a clearing. There was a small structure, half a cabin, half a shed, built from rotting timber and sheet metal. It leaned to one side like it had been losing a battle with gravity for years. She called out, "Jonah?" Silence. She stepped closer, opened the door, and there he was, 39 years old, sun-worn face, beard, eyes too familiar to mistake. He looked like Ethan. He looked like Clare. He looked like her, Jonah. He didn't speak at first, just stared. Then, "You remember any of it?" Emily shook her head slowly. "Nothing, just flashes." He nodded. "I remember it all." She stepped inside. The cabin was sparse, a stove, piles of notebooks, a photograph of Clare tacked to the wall, another of her, Maisie. "Why didn't you come back?" Emily asked, her voice cracking. Jonah sat down heavily. "I tried, but by the time I did, you were gone, and they were dead." Emily blinked. "Dead?" "Claire and Ethan were killed the night after we reached New Hampshire. They said it was an accident. Fire. But I saw it. It wasn't an accident." He looked at her. "You and I were supposed to be together, but Mom split us up to protect us. She handed you off to Liam. I stayed behind. She thought separating us would keep us alive." Emily collapsed into the opposite chair. She couldn't breathe. "What happened that night?" Jonah leaned forward. "We were hiding in the cabin. Dad said he had evidence, papers, recordings. He was going to bring down the whole operation in Brattleboro. Names, bribes, shell companies. But someone followed us." Jonah's voice lowered. "A cop, someone we trusted. He set the fire, took the files, killed them both. I ran." Emily stared at him. "What cop?" Jonah held her eyes, then said one name. "Sam Callahan." Emily's breath caught. "No. He helped me. He protected me." Jonah's expression twisted. "He's the one who sold Dad out. He was being paid off by Halbrook, and when Halbrook died, Sam buried the rest. He's been covering his tracks ever since." Emily shook her head. "No, he was attacked. Someone trashed his house. He left me a warning." Jonah stood. "He left you a performance. He knew you were getting close. He's playing both sides. He always has." Emily reached into her coat and pulled out Claire's journal. Jonah took it, flipped to the final page. "It's not complete," he said. "There was another journal, one she kept hidden. She used to write in it after we left Brattleboro. I think it's still out there." Emily whispered, "Then we find it." Jonah hesitated. "We can't do this alone. It's too big now." She looked him in the eye. "We already survived it once. We owe them the truth." They agreed to meet again in 2 days. Jonah would go underground and search old contacts. Emily would follow a new lead from Grace, a man named Vernon Chase, an old surveyor who once worked for Halbrook and disappeared shortly after the fire. Grace believed he was still alive, in hiding. Emily found him in a nursing home just outside. Vernon was 87, frail, but he mentioned Claire Williamson. He sat upright for the first time in days. "She was smart," he said, "braver than all of us." He told her everything. In 1999, Halbrook bought large parcels of protected land under fake family names, using forged documents. Claire discovered the scheme while helping Ethan with paperwork. When she threatened to go public, Halbrook threatened their children, so they ran. "But the cop," said, "he made them think they had a way out." Emily leaned in. "Sam?" Vernon nodded. "He said he could protect them, told them to meet at the cabin, but it was a setup." He coughed hard, took a sip of water. I told Clare not to trust him, but she was desperate. She left something with me, the real documents, told me to hide them. I buried them near the creek behind the old ranger station, never told a soul, till now." Emily's hands trembled. "Are they still there?" He closed his eyes. "If no one's found them, yes." She drove straight there, dug near the creek until her fingers bled. And then the shovel hit metal, a weatherproof case, sealed tight. Inside, deeds with forged signatures, financial ledgers, a ledger with Sam Callahan's name, 5 payments over 2 years, a full transcript of Clare's confession, and a final page, signed by Ethan, naming every official involved. Emily sat back in the dirt holding the papers to her chest. This was it, the truth. That night she met Jonah again. They scanned the files, confirmed everything. Jonah turned to her. "We go public." Emily nodded. They scheduled a meeting with Rodriguez at the state attorney's office. But when they arrived the next morning, the office was cordoned off. Police cars, yellow tape. Emily stepped out of the car. A reporter stood nearby, speaking into a microphone. "Breaking news this morning as former state investigator Alicia Rodriguez was found dead in her home. Sources say the death is being treated as suspicious." Emily's knees buckled. Jonah caught her. Before they could react, a car screeched to a halt nearby. A man stepped out. Older, coat, familiar face. Sam Callahan. His eyes locked with Emily's. He raised his hands slowly. "I never meant to hurt them," he said, "but you need to hear the whole story." Sam Callahan Mantive as Mos Irgitas. The early morning fog clung to the pavement around them like smoke. The wind moved slow and cold through the parking lot of the state attorney's office. No one else spoke. Emily's heart pounded. She looked at Jonah. He stood still, jaw clenched, like a loaded spring. Sam stepped closer. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to give you the rest." Emily's voice was hoarse. "You lied to me," he nodded. "I did," Jonah shouted. "You killed them." "No," Sam said, steady. "I didn't. I failed them. But I didn't light that fire." Emily held up the documents. "Then how do you explain this? The payments? The meeting? The lies?" Sam's shoulders dropped. "I was part of it at the start. Albrook paid me to look the other way. Just a few land deals. I didn't ask questions, but when Clare brought me the proof, everything changed." He looked at them both. "I tried to help. I told them to run. I told them I'd cover their exit. But I wasn't the only one Halbrook paid. There was another cop, one I didn't know was dirty." "Who?" Jonah demanded. Sam shook his head. "I never found out. After the fire, I panicked. I destroyed what little I had, burned the files, hid the tape. I told myself it was to protect you, Maisie. But I think I just didn't want to go down with it." Emily felt the sting in her throat. "Why help me now?" "Because I see Clare in your eyes, because I was a coward, and because I know I don't have much time left." Jonah stepped forward. "You think this makes it right?" "No," Sam said, "but maybe it's not too late to make it true." He pulled a folded envelope from his coat and handed it to Emily. Inside was a confession, signed, names, details, and a photo, taken from a distance, of the man who lit the fire, a former Brattleboro officer named Kenneth Duvall. "He disappeared in 2001, Sam said. "Went off the grid. I think he's still alive, and I think he's the key to closing this." Emily stared at the photo. The man was older, bearded, with a scar across his cheek. She remembered nothing about him, but Jonah did. "I saw him," he whispered. "He chased us the night Dad was shot. He had the scar then." Sam nodded. "He was Halbrook's enforcer, did the dirty work so others could keep their hands clean." Jonah turned away, breathing hard. "This is too much, too late." But Emily stood still. "I'm not walking away now. We survived because they gave everything. I'm not burying them again." That afternoon, Emily and Jonah gave copies of the recovered documents and Sam's confession to a federal journalist in Boston, a woman named Marcy Lane. She'd been chasing whispers of the Holbrook conspiracy for a decade. When she saw the files, she wept. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew it wasn't just rumor." She promised to publish everything, not just an article, a full exposé, national coverage. But that night, Jonah didn't show up to meet Emily for dinner. She waited 2 hours, called 5 times. No answer. When she returned to the motel, her room had been broken into again. Nothing stolen, just one thing left on the bed, Jonah's baseball glove, the same one from the photo on the porch swing. And a note, 4 words, "Some ghosts stay buried." Emily's hands shook violently. She called Sam. "I think they got him." Sam came at once, but something had shifted in his eyes. Fear. They drove together to the ranger station, searched every nearby cabin. Nothing. Emily broke down near the creek. "I can't lose him again." Sam crouched beside her. "You won't." He handed her one last item, a cassette. "The real second tape," he said. "The one Clare recorded just before they ran." Emily stared at it, then slid it into the old player Sam had kept. Clare's voice filled the air. "Maisie, if this reaches you, you were the bravest of us all. We made mistakes, trusted wrong people, but we loved you more than life. Jonah, if you're with her, know I forgive you, and I am proud of you. Don't let fear be louder than truth, and don't let silence become your story." Emily collapsed into tears. Sam didn't speak. The next morning, Jonah was found, barely conscious, in the back of a truck near the Vermont border, beaten. He had crawled out of a basement after escaping his captors. He told them everything. It was Kenneth Duvall, alive, still working underground as a private fixer, still watching. Jonah gave the authorities his name, his location, his network. Within 48 hours, Duvall was arrested in upstate New York. Emily and Jonah were brought into protective custody. The FBI reopened the Williamson case. Clare and Ethan were officially declared victims of homicide. Maisie's birth certificate was unsealed. Her name, her real name, restored. And when the article went live, the world watched. The family that tried to expose corruption and paid the price. Clare and Ethan's faces on every screen. Jonah's account, Emily's survival, the cabin, the map, the photograph. Emily stood outside the old Williamson house weeks later, alone. Sunlight came through the trees. She carried something in her pocket, the red heart necklace, Maisie's. She placed it on the front step, not to reclaim it, but to leave it there, a reminder. That truth, when buried, doesn't die. It waits. The town of Brattleboro never fully recovered from what happened in the summer of 1999. But after 26 years of silence, the truth had finally been spoken. Not shouted, but whispered steadily, like the wind through the pines behind the Williamson house. Emily, or rather Maisie Clare Williamson, stood once more at the edge of Briar Lane, watching the wind stir the overgrown grass in the front yard. The same red tricycle still sat by the porch, rusted into place, like it had waited for her all these years. She didn't cry, not anymore. She had cried in the motel, in the hospital when she held Jonah's hand after he was found, in the federal office when she watched the tape of her mother's final words. She had cried when the court unsealed her birth certificate, when she signed the papers to reclaim the Williamson name. But not today. Today she stood still, present. A small crowd had gathered across the street, reporters, neighbors. The house had been declared a historical site, not for its architecture, but for what it had come to symbolize, the cost of truth, and the resilience of those who protect it. Inside, the rooms had been preserved. The yellow bedroom, the toy chest, the piano with one missing key, the red heart necklace was now displayed in a glass case beside Clare's journal. Emily stepped inside for the last time. Each room whispered memories she never had, but somehow still felt. Jonah walked beside her. He moved with a limp now, the bruises on his face mostly faded. But the way he looked at her, protective, fierce, broken whole, that was new. That was real. They stood together in the living room. The sunlight broke through the window at the same angle it had 26 years ago. "I used to dream of this place, Emily, but I thought it was just imagination. Turns out it was memory." Jonah nodded. "You used to sit right there." He pointed to the floor. "With your bear. Clare would play piano." Emily turned toward the wall where the family photos had once hung. She pulled something from her coat pocket, a new photo, taken last week. Jonah and Emily, now adults, standing in front of the house, holding a framed photo of Clare and Ethan. She pinned it to the wall with a tack for whoever came next. That evening she walked to the creek where the documents had been buried. The trees stood tall around her. The water moved slow, steady. She sat on the same rock Jonah had once hidden behind, took out a notebook, and began to write. Not a journal, not a confession, a letter to Clare. "You didn't get to see me grow up. But you saved me anyway. You gave up everything so I could live. And though it took me years to remember your face, I never forgot the feeling. They called it survival. But really, it was love." When she was done, she folded the letter, buried it under the same earth that had once hidden the truth. A few days later, Jonah left Vermont. He needed space, a new beginning, but he promised to write, to call, to stay close. They weren't children anymore, but they had one thing back that they'd lost long ago. Emily stayed for one more night. The house was quiet. She wandered to Maisie's bedroom and lay down on the bed. The same moonlight filtered through the curtains, and then, as if called by some invisible echo, she remembered. Clare's voice, soft, whispering, singing. "Sleep, my star. You're safe tonight. The world is quiet. The moon is bright." She smiled through tears, not grief, not pain, but peace. Because now she finally knew where she came from, who she was, and why it all mattered. Before leaving town, she walked into the local diner, ordered black coffee, sat by the window. An older woman behind the counter asked, "You're the girl from the story, aren't you?" Emily nodded once. The woman smiled kindly. "You made it. That's what matters." And with a quiet smile, Emily whispered, "No, we made it." She walked outside, took one last look at Briar Lane, and disappeared down the road.